Hello viewers at home, thank you once again for joining us on this very show of Dinner Guide on BrandPlus TV. My name is Chef Andy, your regular host, and today we're going to be making something quite simple. Some of you may be able to already do this yourselves, but for those who may not have been able to get a chance to see it, we're going to be bringing a nice beautiful touch to a very simple dish, which is a chicken biryani. But before we proceed to the cooking, we're going to begin by introducing the ingredients we'll be working with today, just to give you a broader understanding of what to expect with this particular episode. So from the very front, you're going to require 1 small red onion. You're going to require also a teaspoon of tomato paste, a tablespoon of coconut oil, and you'll also require some chaat masala. You also require some cinnamon powder, about 2 pieces of cloves, and some paprika powder. You'll require also some mint leaves, some garlic powder, some coconut cream, and some minced ginger. To that we'll also incorporate 2 medium potatoes, 1 large carrot, peeled of course. You're also going to require about 100 grams of 1 chicken breast or boneless chicken of any particular cut you may prefer. You're going to be serving that with some steamed rice of course. You also require 1 large green pepper, some garlic cloves there, a bit of some coriander leaves, some oil to cook with, some salt and pepper to season with, and some water to help you while making your dish. So we're going to take a break now, giving you a chance to grab your pens and papers, and when we come back, we're going to dive right into it. See you after a short while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you missed the introduction, we're going to be making a very simple chicken biryani today. I'm going to start off very simply by explaining some of the ingredients we're going to be working with. As I mentioned, there are very many things, or particularly very many ingredients that you can actually incorporate to meals these days, as opposed to before where a lot of ingredients were not available to us locally, but now with a lot of introduction of such ingredients such as the coconut oil, also a very good alternative to using vegetable or olive oil. Remember, it actually carries quite a bit of flavor. Pairing that with the coconut milk will also bring a very good, nice, humble balance of flavors. And then again, we're also going to be incorporating some carrots and some green pepper, which will also bring in a bit of color, which you'll be able to see as we continue with the show. But before we begin, we're going to start off very quickly by heating up our pan on the side. Just give that a few minutes to heat up. And while that continues, we're going to start firstly by cubing our chicken. So just move that to your board and begin first by slicing that lengthways into 3 pieces. Proceed to turn that sideways and proceed to cut that into about 1/2 inch chunks. Of course, making very sure to cut your chicken pieces almost in line and in similar size. Remember, this will also aid in giving a nice beautiful presentation and also help in cooking the chicken more evenly right through the process. So we're going to move that to the side very quickly, and I'll quickly also change over to the second side of the board, and we're going to start the process very simply by chopping up some garlic. So proceed to chop that very, very finely. Now, something I could also mention about a chicken biryani, very particularly different to a mutton, beef, or anything in relation to lamb as well. Remember, this cooks quite a little faster than most cuts of meat. Chicken being a white variety of meat, remember this will cook a little faster. So you may actually want to adjust your cooking times for this particular dish, making sure to not overcook your chicken right through the process. So just finish off your garlic. Right, so proceed to add that to your pot. Of course, making sure to add a bit of oil. About a tablespoon should do for this recipe. Next up, we're going to proceed to chop our onion very finely. Be sure to discard the root ends. Proceed to do the same for your second piece. And just very quickly finish by chopping that through, making sure it is as fine as possible. And proceed to add that to your pot. Now, for this particular recipe, for most recipes that call for the same, we'd normally start by browning the meat. But remember, chicken being a white cut of meat and a very particularly one that cooks very, very quickly, you may want to also put a reminder that you may want to add your chicken a little after cooking your aromatics. Your aromatics being your garlic, your onion, and last but not least, your ginger. Now proceed to cook those at medium heat. And at this stage, just to give it a nice infusion of flavor, we're going to add in our coconut oil. So I'm using a particularly local coconut oil. This comes from the coastal region of Kenya. You can actually be able to get this in your regular retail stores now. And remember, as I mentioned, it does also give a nice, beautiful change of flavor to your dish. And remember, a lot of ingredients out there may always go unnoticed, but remember, it's always a matter of trying one ingredient after another. This will actually give you a better understanding of everything that you may actually want to incorporate into your pantries. Right, once you've gotten that far, we're going to proceed to add our 2 cloves. Just remember to always just pierce the top of your clove. That should actually allow for the flavors to permeate a little faster. To that, we'll add our tomato paste and proceed to cook that, mixing vigorously, making sure to dissolve your tomato paste very, very quickly. And now we can proceed to add the rest of our dry spices, beginning with our cinnamon powder, our chaat masala, and then a bit of that paprika powder. About half a teaspoon should do for this recipe. Now, once your spices are combined perfectly in your pot, almost combining to form a paste, proceed to reconstitute them to one side of your pot and we're basically going to quickly move this to a small bowl. And remember, this particular technique of cooking does allow for two things. It does allow for you to really build your flavors with your aromatics. Also allows for you to avoid overcooking them, thus giving it a very bitter taste and a very unpleasant taste at the end of the cooking process. So very simply, reserve that on the side. Using the same pot you had in the beginning, proceed to add a little more oil to your pot and proceed to add your chicken. Now proceed to mix that through. Of course, moving your mixture right around the pan always helps for you to really combine your flavors to the center of the pot. And this will also allow for your chicken to cook and color a little more evenly. Remember, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you are also allowed to use any other cut of chicken, particularly even drumsticks. But very important to remember, if you are going to be making a biryani, you may want to use boneless meat. Remember, this is a very simple dish, and particularly once having bones in there, it will make your dish a little chunkier. So very important to remember, always try and use some boneless meat, especially for white meat. And you can also use some fish fillets if you're looking at doing anything different from chicken. Right, so once that's almost halfway cooked, proceed to add your aromatics back to your pot. Proceed to mix through. Proceed to add a little bit of water. Give that a mix through once more. And at this stage, this should actually give your chicken quite a bit of time to cook through, absorb the liquid, absorb the flavors, and the liquid will also help to also break down your spices in there, allow it to really give it a nice subtle finish. And now while that continues, we're going to proceed to prepare the rest of our ingredients. So I'm going to start off with the carrots, being that they take a little longer to cook. So begin by slicing some nice long slices from each of your chunks. Remember, always begin by taking off the first side. This will allow for you to get a nicer, evenlier carrot to chop. And it will also allow for you to avoid chopping off your fingertips. Now proceed to cut those lengthways. Once done, proceed to julienne them very quickly, making sure to make them as thin as possible. Now we're just going to use just a little bit of our carrot there. Now once julienned, turn them sideways once and proceed to chop them a little finer. And of course, very importantly, always remember to keep checking your pot, especially when cooking under high heat. Remember, it is very easy for you to actually overcook your chicken or ruin your mixture by leaving your pot unattended or allowing it to cook covered. So very important to also keep your lid off the pot for this particular process. And once your liquid is cooked and reduced to half, proceed to add your carrots. And next up, we're also going to proceed to cut up our pepper. So very simply, begin by taking off the top end next to the stem. And using your knife, proceed to core right around the center of your pepper. Proceed to remove the heart and discard. And now proceed to slice as per usual, making sure to always remember to remove that white membrane in the inside. Remember that actually gives it a very, very bitter taste, and you may want to discard this before proceeding to add your bell pepper to your mixture. So just proceed to remove all your membrane and discard that. You can actually reserve that if you're going to be making stock. Throw it in your stock pot, it will give it quite a bit of a flavor. And now proceed to julienne as you did for the carrots. And again, turn one sideways, allowing you to chop that into some very small cubes. Proceed to chop the same way to the very end, and do the same for that end piece. Chop that halfway, finish by chopping that off. In this particular recipe will always guarantee that you don't have any of your green pepper wasted actually. Right, so carrots have been now cooking for about 2 to 3 minutes. This should take about another 2 minutes to completely soften those. But while we do that, we are going to incorporate our green bell pepper. Remember to always give your mixture a quick mix before allowing for your ingredients to proceed to cook. Right, now very simply we're going to proceed to add among our last ingredients, which is the tomatoes. So for this you're going to begin by first cutting those into wedges of 4 pieces. Next up, using your knife, proceed to remove the seeded core of the tomato. And this particularly cannot be used as waste. Remember, you can actually throw this in a blender, puree them and add them to the mixture. That way you'll actually make sure not to waste any of your tomato. But if you are not going to be using it particularly for your recipe, you can always discard it. Right, so tomatoes wedged. Proceed to cut those into strips. Now we're going to be using medium tomatoes for this recipe. If you do decide to adjust to a large tomato, use only 1 piece to 100 grams of chicken. Right, now our mixture is now a little dry. We're just going to add a small bit of water, and we're going to combine that with about 1.5 tablespoons of cooking cream. Mix that through once more, and you can now bring your heat to medium. And proceed to add the rest of your tomatoes, making sure as well to chop that also into very small cubes. Remember, this particularly helps to have a very beautiful consistency in your dish. Also allows for everything to be one particular size, giving it a nice visual appearance once the dish gets to your plate. So tomatoes in. Mix that through once more. And Now we're going to allow that to continue cooking until the liquid is almost completely reduced, and then we're going to complete the dish by adding a bit of our garlic powder, a bit of our mint, and also a bit of our coriander. But before we get to that point, we are going to give you just a few minutes to relieve yourselves, and we'll see you after a short break. Hello viewers, once more, and welcome yet again back to the show. We're about to plate the beautiful dish we've been making, but we're going to finish this off very quickly. As I mentioned, there were some ingredients that we did not add before we took a break, which we're going to be finishing that off now. So I will begin by adding some garlic powder at this stage. This will actually just bring up a very good aroma to the dish, and also helps in correcting for seasoning. To that, I will also add some fresh coriander leaves. Just to chop the rest of that. At this stage, you can chop that nice and fine. Now proceed to add that to your pot. Now to finish that off, a bit of some fresh mint. Now just to finish your dish off, always remember to season with a bit of salt and a bit of some pepper. Mix that through once more. Of course, finishing your dish, always finish your dish at low heat. This will allow for your dish to stay warm, and it will also allow for it to avoid overcooking. Now once that is done, we're going to proceed to plate. So begin by grabbing the plate you'll be plating your dish on, and you can now turn off the heat completely. Give that one quick mixture once more, and you can now proceed to scoop everything onto your plate, serving that of course right on the side adjacent to the rice. Simple as that. Garnish with a bit of some freshly crushed black peppercorns, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very simple infused chicken biryani. Thank you once more for tuning in today, and I will also remind you to check out our YouTube page. Plenty of videos there from work we've done before. Definitely something for most of you or all of you to learn from. And for those of you who may have any questions, comments, or inquiries pertaining the show, you can also log into our Facebook page. Leave your comments there, and me and my producers will definitely be looking forward to getting some feedback from you. But from the studio, it has been a pleasure being with you today. And until the next episode, where we continue to bring some nice, beautiful dishes inspired by us just for you, thank you once more. Have a lovely evening, and see you soon.